Nick Feldman, how's it going with you and Wang Chung? We got a new album out coming soon.
That's very true. And yes, it's going well, and we're kind of excited about it.
So it's been a little while since an album surfaced?
Yeah, it's been a while, a long while. I can't remember how long, but quite a long time. But then we did take 20 years off, you know.
Now, how does it feel taking 20 years off and then coming out with an album now?
It feels fantastic. It sort of never ceases to amaze me how anyone, would be remotely interested sort of all these years later. But, they have remained interested, pretty much constantly ever since, the 80s. So if you told me back then that people would still be interested, I definitely wouldn't have believed you. So it feels great. I feel very lucky.
Now, this album is called Taser Up, and we've seen our artwork on it, and it's interesting artwork at that. It's got that, futuristic taser gun, or ray gun, I should say.
Exactly. I think it was sort of, I don't know if Jack already told you, but, I think he saw the picture. It was a painting in a local art gallery that he saw, and he really liked it. And then it was when we were sort of working on Abducted by the 80s, so it seemed to have a kind of loose sort of relevance to that, as in ray guns and being abducted, So we kind of just thought it would make a good sort of logo kind of design for everything we did. So we can sort of change the colours of it for whatever release that we do. What this album cover is actually the original picture.
So what do you think of today, releasing an album, almost strictly online versus, the days that we had vinyl coming out in stores and there was actually stores selling music back then? It's all changed.
Yes. Well, it's a very different landscape these days. In some ways, it's better, and in some ways, of course, it's worse. I think, what's better about it is that I think you can control your own means of distribution, whereas in the old days, I think you were completely dependent on the record companies and their relationship with radio, and you had to go through the gatekeepers to get anywhere. So you didn't have control yourself, but of course, those guys had the means of distribution under control. So only certain people could get through that, But I think now what's interesting is that, everyone can at least make their music and their products available to the whole world through the internet. So that's a very empowering thing and a very healthy thing. Of course, the only downside to that is that because everyone can do it, there's a whole lot of not very good stuff up there. And it's quite hard, very hard to get people to be aware of it, the public, to be aware of it. But again, on the good side, I think that means that you have to do something good,
Right.
And if it's good, then people will share it. And in a way, that's how it should be. So there's good and there's bad. To add one more thing.
Yes.
The bad thing, I think, is that recorded music itself, because of this, because the fact that it's so readily available and so easy to steal, that recorded music has become, maybe less important in a sense of, it's more like something, it's like a calling card to maybe get people to come to your gigs. So in that sense, I think that's sad, because I think we love going in the studio, we love making music and recording it. So that's a sad thing, but on the other hand, there's good and there's bad.
Let's take a point like somebody going on the internet and stealing all sorts of albums and just having collections, let's say, and do they actually even listen to the songs? Like versus when you actually have a vinyl that you have to play through the whole thing to get to, see what's going on it.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. You had to kind of work harder in the old days. And if you've gone out and you bought something, then you're going to, spend that time sort of consuming it and listening to it. And, every record I used to buy, I'd listen to it till I wore out the grooves. I mean, it was just, I knew every single note. and was completely obsessed by it, you know. So I don't know, now, these days, the culture's shifted because there's many more ways of things to consume and to be entertained by. So music is not quite so central to the culture as it used to be. You know, there's video, there's games, there's YouTube, there's all sorts of stuff that you can computers, all sorts of stuff that grabs the attention. You know, so I think it's harder to fight for that space. You know, and keep the attention like the old days.
Now, do you see that the 80s are becoming popular again, or has it always been popular?
I think there's always been an affection for the 80s, since the 80s. But definitely, I think for quite a while, there's been something almost fashionable about it, both in, you know, clothes and fashion, but also in music as well. So you get a lot of younger bands who are copying a lot of sort of production and arrangement ideas from the 80s and actually using a lot of those sounds. So it's quite present now, even in contemporary culture, as well as you know, in the past. And I think that, you know, to be honest, that's been kind of good for us. I think it's helped us to remain in the culture, and our music, you know, gets synced and used in contemporary sort of TV shows, big TV shows and movies all the time. So it's sort of, again, we're very glad about that.
Nick, what I was talking to Jack Hughes earlier about was like the name Wang Chung, that it keeps on being, you know, spread from, you know, TV shows and all this stuff, you know, promoted by Netflix, let's say now, so that people get to see old reruns of certain stuff and find out, oh, what's that Wang Chung thing? Then they find out, oh, that's a, you know, band with this big hit in the 80s. And it just goes from there. What do you think of that? You know, the name being so, you know, associated with a lot of things.
I think it's fantastic. I mean, you know, because of Everybody Have Fun Tonight, for example, Everybody Wang Chung Tonight, you know, Wang Chung, it became a kind of expression, you know, let's go and Wang Chung. And no one quite knew what that meant. Maybe it sounded a bit rude, maybe it was just meant to have fun, who knows what it meant, you know. So there was a kind of slight mystery to it, but I think because of that it got used, it's been used in a lot of TV shows, just verbally as a kind of figure of speech, you know. And I kind of love that. I think we both love that sort of mystery. And we've made I don't know if you've seen it, we've made a little compilation punchline clip called Can You Tell Me What a Wang Chung Is? Which is actually a quote from Everybody Have Fun Tonight. And we stuck together all the mentions and punchlines of Wang Chung mentions in big TV shows and movies, you know, like Austin Powers and The Simpsons. And I can send you links to that if you haven't already seen it. But
is this on the official website?
Yeah.
Yes, I've seen it, and I think that's a very good way to show to the audience.
Exactly. It's sort of, and I think, you know, younger people can sort of, you know, get like you were just saying, you know, they can get intrigued by it, and of course older people know sort of what Wang Chung is. So it's a brilliant way of linking the past to the present, you know.
Now, Nick, do you think in, let's say, 50 years from now, Wang Chung is actually going to be in a dictionary?
Well, it already is in the dictionary, actually. In the, you know, the Urban Dictionary. Have you heard of the Urban Dictionary? It's a big kind of dictionary. We are in the Urban Dictionary, so you can find that online.
Okay, well, that's awesome.
You can buy it in shops too. It's kind of so. Yeah, there's all sorts of derivations. Some of them really quite rude, but it's very amusing.
How do you look at, like, let's say, approaching the studio and recording an album nowadays?
Oh, I see. Well, you know, these days you can do a lot more, you know, out of a traditional studio environment. So you can work on your laptop at home. You can then take it into a sort of studio space that you can send stuff. We can send stuff, Jack and I, we can send stuff between us over the internet and work on it separately and together, you know. So that's kind of it's quite, you know, liberating and empowering. But having said that, I think we always, even back in the 80s, I think we were quite early adopters of sort of using sequencers and synths and samplers, and you know, we were right there at the beginning. So I think our mindset was already there, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
So what we're doing now is just a sort of logical progression from those days, if you know what I mean. As opposed to us being like a traditional band, all 4 or 5 guys in a room playing, and then you record it.
Right.
I think we've always sort of constructed things and used this, you know, technology in the studio as a kind of instrument to layer things up and create sound pictures, you know, that kind of thing.
Let's say it's a song on this new album. How long would it take, you know, roughly to make one song recorded, done from the beginning?
Yeah, I mean, it totally varies, you know, but sometimes it can be really quick, just a few days, you know, and other ones we kind of will just play with it, send it to each other, you know, live with it for a while, come up with a new section, change the vocal, you know, change the drum sound, you know, all that kind of stuff. And that can go on for ages, you know. I suppose the album did take us a few years to sort of put together. And it wasn't like solid work over those few years. It was like we'd just do a bit here and a bit there, and then we'd be doing our other things that we do in our lives, you know. And then, you know what I mean? So it would sort of evolve quite slowly but quite naturally.
Let's say you do work so much on one song, does it get tiring and then you have to move on and forget it for a little while and then go back on it?
It can get like that. I mean, there is the law of diminishing returns, which means, you know, the more work you put into something, the less you can see it. Or what's the other expression? You can't see the wood for the trees. You sort of lose your objectivity, and you can't really see what it's, or hear what it's really sounding like.
Right.
So there is a limit to what you can do, and so I think we had the sort of ability to be able to just put something to one side, live with it, think about something else, and then come back to it. So it kept us. I think we kept objective over the whole period of the record, you know. And of course, I could judge Jack's what he's been doing, and he could judge what I'm doing. So there were different ways of dealing with it.
When you go in your back catalog, is there songs we've yet to hear, you know, from the 80s, you know, that could have been a hit, but you just never produced it?
Yeah, there's quite a few things, actually. In fact, I don't know, about a year or so ago, Jack and I went through all these old demos. We both dug out some old stuff that we both had, and we got together and we kind of listened through to all this stuff, and some of it, you know, was sounded really good, actually. We were quite impressed with some of it. And some of it sounded like if it had a bit of work, maybe it could turn into something good. In fact, I don't know if I should say this, but we're one of the songs that we demoed back in the 80s. It's getting a lot of interest from the new Grand Theft Auto upcoming video computer game, you know. They're sort of interested in using it, but we haven't, nothing's in the bag yet, so, but yeah, I think there's all sorts of potential in stuff that we did back in the past.
When you take something like from the past, would you take it as it is then, or would you actually redo it?
I think it varies. You know, like the track that I just was talking about, I think we just sent it to them as is, you know.
Okay.
But there's some other ideas that I think we could, you know, add some new stuff to, maybe rewrite some of the melodies, or just reprogram some of the some of the parts, and repurpose it for now, you know. So I think again both applies, but I think there's a lot of potential. And I mean, one of our plans is to at some stage release a lot of this stuff, you know. So we will be putting a lot of it out at some point.
And Nick Feldman, is Taser Up going to go on tour in 2013?
Yep, we really hope so. I mean, we're looking. Our agent is looking into putting a tour together with us and maybe some other bands. There's all sorts of sort of things we're looking at, but yeah, we're very keen to get out there and play. I think our live show is really fun playing live now, and I think we've got a lot better than we were in the 80s actually, and we've got a good strong repertoire to choose from. And I think we know how to kind of rock an audience much more than we used to. So I mean, we always get a fantastic response, and we try and mix obviously all the hits and the old stuff with some new stuff. I think we want to keep it a bit vibrant and sort of fresh. We don't just want to be like a cabaret act. So we're quite serious about it, but I think it's much more entertaining now than it used to be, and I think we really enjoy it all the more for that.
Let's say you take a song like Everybody Have Fun Tonight. Do you sometimes change it around when you're playing live?
Yeah, we'll have sections, and we'll get the audience sort of singing along and clapping along and that sort of stuff, you know. And we'll sometimes get different solos, and so yeah.
To keep it interesting for yourself, because you played it quite a bit, I'm sure.
We've played it quite a bit, but it's such fun playing it that, you know, we don't have a problem with that. I mean, obviously we keep to a certain structure. Sometimes we might change it, but, you know, we'll change things within it, for certainly. But, and then there's other songs we do that, you know, that we've never done before. Like, for example, we never used to play Fire in the Twilight, which is from Breakfast Club, the movie.
Mm-hmm.
We never played that back in the 80s, but we play it sometimes now, you know. And it's a kind of, we really rock out with that one, you know. Or there's some tracks from the very first album, the Wang Chung album. You know, we play I Could Never Love You in a Half-Hearted Way. So we hadn't played that for about 30 years, you know. We played that in the last set of gigs, and it was really fun, and the audience enjoyed it, you know. Even people who didn't know it, you know, enjoyed it.
Another thing, too, we got to look at is, let's say, Sirius Radio in North America certainly are playing, you know, lots of Wang Chung, you know, on the 80s networks and stuff like that, and just keeps it alive.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
It should be a great feeling knowing you're a platinum-selling artist.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It really, you know, I so often get calls from people or emails going, "Oh, hey, we're just listening to you. We're in this bar, and you know, or we just heard you on the radio, or we just heard you in this place or that place." You know, it's just it's so gratifying. You know, it's a great feeling. Long may it continue.
The album sounds great, fresh, you know, very new, and keep up the great work.
Thank you, man.
On YouTube, people are going crazy on lyric videos.
They do. It's interesting because, you know, with, what's it called, Space Junk, which, you know, is in The Walking Dead. It's been used in The Walking Dead.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a relatively obscure song of ours that people didn't particularly know. And it got used on The Walking Dead. And, of course, you know, there's a lot of interest in it now on YouTube. A whole bunch of, there's all these different clips that people have done themselves using Space Junk, you know. And I don't know, we've had it must be about between 500,000 and 1 million views on Space Junk. And that's not even our own video, if you know. But I think the biggest one of all of them is the lyric video that someone did. They got the lyrics slightly wrong, actually, but it's interesting that I noticed that was, you know, bigger than all the other clips. So it's clearly something that's important. And so we're going to do one for stargazing, but that won't be done till January.
Of course. Well, that would be great to see because, I mean, lyric videos is the way to go, it seems. It's cheap, it's easy to make.
Exactly.
And it works.
And it works, exactly. So I think the more of those we do, the better. And I think we can get a bit of traction on YouTube, of course, and that's a great way of getting some attention to what we're doing.
Excellent stuff. Well, Nick Feldman, you and Wang Chung, the group. Hopefully everything goes great for 2013 and with Taser up.
Thank you, man. Thanks for your interest.